Hello, my name is Jose, my wife Lucy
Hello.
Lopez. We've been coming to Calvary for the last 22 years. Our kids grew up in here. They serve here for many years.
And most importantly, it's a place where we call home, where we are able to learn the Bible and apply our beliefs, a place where we enjoy to worship and build relationships.
We're excited because I'm glad the building is small for the amount of people coming to see, looking for God. And it's a great problem to have that we need to build something bigger for more people to congregate, look for God, learn about wisdom, learn about fellowship with others.
So I've seen our church through many phases, from being a mobile church, where I had the privilege and honor to see my children of ages 8 and 6, along with my husband, be part of the setup team, where it meant setting up speakers, setting up soundboards, setting up everything that we needed to be a church. 9 years later, we found ourselves in this building over the last 9 years. Super exciting to know that now we've outgrown this building. We're going to have the opportunity to build a new building, have this for our youth, our young people, and in addition to that, then see a new building where the continued growth, the continued ability for this community to seek God, to give their lives to God, to get baptized. There are just so many exciting things that come with a new building.
Our personal commitment is going to be different this time around. I learned from early age that giving to God is important. That's the number one thing. It was not a problem, never a problem, giving my tithe and offering to the Lord. Now it's going to be a little bit different. We were looking for a camper for future retirement. We're going to postpone looking for a camper because giving God the opportunity to work in the community with a new facility, I believe is worth it, waiting for a little bit for the camper.
As my husband said, he retired, I'm getting ready to retire, but by no means is our feeling and our commitment lessened. It's actually gotten, we've had the opportunity to talk about what can we give up, and definitely we're starting with giving up our camper. Hey, there'll be time for us to buy a camper. There may be some other things because we want to really make an impact in our contribution in this level at this time for this new building, because we know it's going to make a difference, and we want to be part of that difference, and we want to see that difference. So, for us, it's just been more of we're ready. We just need to do this because we want to see growth. We want to see people. We want folks to experience what we've had over the last, 22 years that we've been at the church, and previously to that, as believers. So we're excited that we can be part of this, where we're saying a new level, but it's a commitment. It's a strong and heavy commitment for us as a family, but still worth it, So we can't, like I said, we can't wait. We want to be part of seeing this growth.
Hey, we are so glad that you're here with us. And just to let you know, this is the third of 4 commitment weekends that we've been having. You got a next brochure on your chair, and you're like, no, I didn't get a next brochure. You did. You're just sitting on it, and that's why the chair feels uncomfortable. So anyway, our encouragement to you, and we're going to be receiving these. Like if you were here last week, we're going to be receiving these as we did last time. And so our encouragement is, like, during the service, you can fill this out, but we're going to receive them at the end. If you're like me and you do everything online, then you can there's a QR code that you can click on. It'll take you to calvarynext.com, and you can do your first and best gift. You can set up the commitment for the 3-year campaign and set it up all there. Okay, now, just outside of Ithaca, New York, there is a museum, and it's not unlike any museum that you've ever been to, because it is a museum that solely exists for product failures. Now, the entry fee to this museum is $5,000 per person. And there is a line all year long of business executives, CEOs, all these people that are producing products that we see, and they are going in there to make sure they don't add anything to this hall of shame that exists. There is over $4 million worth of inventory in this museum. And these are ideas that they're like, hey, we have this idea for a thing, and they see it in the museum. They're like, well, we're definitely not doing that. And so now I'll give you an example. Things like 7-Up lip balm. Like that was one thing. Like that is lip balm that tastes like 7-Up. Who would want that? I mean, who would want a 7-Up? But that's a different conversation. Now, and so anyway, there's all this. So let me show you a couple pictures of things. So here's this one. Bengay aspirin. You know what it smells like. Now you can taste it. And so there's that. There's, I like this one. Dunkaballs cereal. Wheaties made this. This was to encourage, it had like a little basketball hoop in the back to encourage kids to play with their food. Now, this tells me that there were no parents who work at Wheaties, because you don't have to encourage parents, you don't have to encourage kids to play with their food. They come with that preloaded in their DNA. There's this one. This is my favorite one. Lonely Man. So you've heard of Hungry Man. This is Hungry Man, but this was the original name, was Lonely Man. I love this part. For all you lonely guys out there, this meal is for you. Like, who in the world came up with this? And anyway, and by the way, something has gone horribly wrong. Anyway, okay, I'm not going to say it, but anyway, there's this other one. I like this, Singles. This is Gerber food, but for adults. And so it's like, man, I really want beef burgundy, but I don't want to chew. Then Singles is for you. I'd really enjoy some creamed beef, liquefied. There it is. So you can enjoy that. There's this one, Thirsty Dog. This is bottled water for your pets. And I think that's become kind of a thing. They do sell that. I'm just going to tell you right now, that's stupid. All right, so if you're buying that, stop. Your pets have no idea. Like, you drank out of a hose as a kid. Your pets will live. But I love this one. This is crispy beef flavor. And so you want to make sure you're grabbing the right bottle if you do buy that. And then I like this one. This is Clairol made this Touch of Yogurt shampoo. This is a shampoo that's edible. So let's say you're in one of this is such a crisis that people have. Like, you're like, man, I have to take a shower, but I also want to eat breakfast. What do I do? Well, Touch of Yogurt is how you do it, because then you're just like, shh. And then as you wash it out, and then it just all goes in. Or if you have really long hair, you're just like, you're just like a chicken bone. Anyway, that's, once again, I neither eat yogurt nor use shampoo. I'm not the clientele for this. So then we have this one. Coors wanted to, they're like, what do people know us for? How about they know us for sparkling water? I don't even know what to say to that, except no. And then here's a good one. Colgate. They started making TV dinners. Now, listen, okay, let me just say a little something here. Colgate, making toothpaste. It's not bad. Stay in your lane. All right, what if they're like, hey, we want to branch out to making toothbrushes? Okay, that's within your brand. We want to make mouthwash. Okay, see, now you're just diversifying based on your core product. But nobody's like, man, I wonder if Colgate, do you think they do a good steamed broccoli? But yet, here's where we are. And that's why it doesn't work. And then Jell-O decided to get in the game with Jell-O salads. This looks like something you would kill in the movie Ghostbusters. And this is just madness. Anyway, so the question becomes, why do marketing executives, why do they pay so much money to visit the museum? It's because they never want to repeat the mistakes that have already been made. And I want you to imagine in your life and in mine, if we could avoid the mistakes that could just derail our lives. I mean, we would do anything to gain that kind of wisdom. Now, while it's impossible to go back and change the past, it is possible to rebuild your life differently from here on out. And that's what Nehemiah is doing. He can't go back before the destruction of Jerusalem. He can't do that. But what he can do is start rebuilding. He can rebuild the walls of Jerusalem and see that everyone gets involved. Listen, when a vision is big. It's never fulfilled simply by one person. It takes all of us to turn a vision into reality. But here's the thing. There's always going to be obstacles because anything that's worth doing is going to have roadblocks and bumps and obstacles ahead. It's always what works. And we're going to see 3 obstacles that Nehemiah experiences, and that is going to really help us, because when we are seeking to fulfill a vision in our lives personally or even as a church corporately, we're all going to run into these types of issues, and we're going to have to figure out how do we do that, and then how do we overcome them and see the vision become a reality. So we're going to start in Nehemiah chapter 3. We're going to start in verse 1, and here's what we read. It says, "Then Eliashib, the high priest, rose up with his brethren, the priests, and built the sheep gate. They consecrated it and hung its doors. They built as far as the Tower of the 100 and consecrated it, and then as far as the Tower of Hananel. Next to Eliashib, the men of Jericho built, and next to them, Zakur, the son of Imri, built. Also the sons of Hanessa built the fish gate. They laid its beams and hung its doors with its bolts and bars, and next to them, Meremoth, the son of Erijah, the son of Koth, made repairs. And next to them, Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, the son of, this guy. Meshes, well, whatever, that dude. He guy's got stuff going on. And Meshi, that's what his friends call him. What's up, Mesh? And all he wore was mesh all the time. That's just his thing. Anyway. Old Mesh, he made repairs. Next to them was Zadok, the son of Bana, made repairs. Next to them, the Tekoites made repairs, but their nobles did not put their shoulders to the work of their Lord. If you pause there and give me your attention, there's 3 vision killers that we're going to talk about, and here's how we deal with them. Number 1, do not delay in getting started. I want you to notice in these opening verses the people who get involved and the people who don't. The first person that's mentioned is the high priest. His name is Eliashib. Now, in chapter 12 of Nehemiah, you'll find out that Eliashib is actually the grandson of Joshua, who was the high priest during the time of Haggai and Zechariah when the temple was being rebuilt. Now, so this is part of his family legacy, that a generation ago, his grandfather was the high priest that saw the temple rebuilt. And now he's part of this legacy of rebuilding the city of Jerusalem. And not only is he ready to set the example, but it's his moment to do something significant. And so let me show you the map if I can. And so this is the map we looked at last time of the city of Jerusalem at the time of Nehemiah. So once again, he's the high priest. It's right by the temple. They build the sheep gate. They build it all the way to the first tower. Then they build it to the second tower, the Tower of Hananel. This is town of Maya, the Tower of the 100. Then we have these guys from Jericho, and they build it all the way to the fish gate, which is now called the Damascus gate. Now, the thing that's interesting is that then in verse 5, we learn about this group called the Tekoites. Now Tekoa, if I can see the other map, was a city. So this is Jerusalem where all the action is happening. And Tekoa is a city. This is about 8 miles. So Bethlehem is about 6 miles, oh, little town. And, okay, forget it. And you guys will get that joke next month. And so anyway, it's about 2 miles from Bethlehem, about 8 miles from Jerusalem. But this is kind of the route you would take if you were on your way to En-Gedi or to the Dead Sea. And so now, let me explain what was happening. This area of Tekoa was close to the area that was controlled by Geshem, who was one of the enemies of Nehemiah and the people that were rebuilding the wall. Tekoa is not mentioned much in the Bible, except there is a prophet named Amos. You may have heard of him. He has a book out. And Amos was born in Tekoa. Now, things got so bad during the captivity of the Babylonians and later the Medo-Persians that even though Jerusalem was in rough shape, it was a much better situation in Jerusalem than it was in this kind of smaller town of Tekoa. So even the people of Tekoa moved in to Jerusalem, and the regular people were more than willing to help. Like, hey, this is where we've been living. We want to make sure that things get rebuilt. It's better for us. It's better for everybody. The nobles, that is the people of influence, the people who were maybe the politicians, the people who were well known, they didn't want to help Nehemiah to succeed. In contrast, I want to show you a couple of other people. If you skip down in Nehemiah 3 to verses 8 and 9, read this. I put it in your notes. Next to him, Uziel, the son of Harhiah, one of the goldsmiths, made repairs. Also, next to him, Hananiah, one of the perfumers, made repairs. And they fortified Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. And next to him, Rephaiah, the son of Hur, leader of half the district of Jerusalem, made repairs. I mean, look at these three guys. You have a goldsmith, that is a jeweler, a perfumer. These are the people when you walk by Macy's, they just start squirting perfume at you. Like, hey, you like this? You like that? Like, no, now I can't see because it's like mace. And anyway, and then next to that guy is this guy who was a district leader. He was in charge of half the city of Jerusalem. They're all working together to turn this vision into a reality. And here's the point. It didn't matter what their skill level was. They wanted to be involved because, once again, they were saying, this is what God's called us to do. We're going to do it. And this is one of the biggest vision killers in your life is excuses. Listen, sometimes we think, well, now is not the time, or something else is going to happen. If you know what God has called you to do, it's time to act. You got to start doing something towards the goal that God has given you. If not, you will get to a point in your life where so much of your life has passed you by because you've been waiting for the perfect moment. Let me tell you something. There is no perfect moment. Solomon, who was the son of King David, Solomon was the king of Israel after his father. He was the wisest man in the world up until that time. Here's what he says in the book of Ecclesiastes. Farmers who wait for perfect weather never plant. If they watch every cloud, they never harvest. And listen, life is busy. There's always an excuse for why it can't get started. Here's my encouragement to you. Instead of finding a good excuse, find a better reason to do it and get going. You will not regret it. Now, let me tell you, and all of us do this in different areas of our life. Sometimes we're very disciplined in certain areas of our lives and we're not so disciplined in other areas. But I saw this happen a little while back. I was driving through my neighborhood and it was, during one of those like hurricanes that never happen. But anyway, everybody had their garage door open. And you know what I saw in everyone's garage? Everyone's garage. I saw some piece of exercise equipment. And it was just a funny thing. But you know what I did not see in anyone's garage? I didn't ever see a person using the aforementioned exercise equipment. And, and it was just funny. Like, I saw clothes drying on top of, treadmills. And I saw Christmas trees leaned up against, weight benches. And I saw some guy, he had like a map of the world on top of his elliptical machine. And I'm like, where are you going, Magellan? And so anyway, and by the way, I don't consider myself I'm not like a neat freak, but I am very committed to organization. And when I drove by this guy's place and his garage, first of all, if my garage was like that, I would bolt it shut until I did something. Anyway, but this dude, it was open, and he had so much junk that he had not dealt with. He had to create aisles in his garage. I mean, this guy had turned into like a Lowe's. And it's like Lowe's / Target / like junkyard. And, it was like Sanford and Son in there. There's like 8 people get that reference anyway. And I'm looking at that and I'm just like, I see things like that and I just start having like a personal crisis. Like I start having a visceral reaction to it. Like I want to just like get out of the car and like, brother, listen to me. There's a better way. His name is Jesus. Based on your garage, I know you don't know him. Because this can't happen. This can't happen. We got to do this. And anyway, but I don't say anything. I just keep going. But I know how it works out. I know how it works out. Is that you're up late watching TV. You're down you're on your couch. You're eating Cheetos and a Diet Coke because you're trying to keep it real. And then you see a late night infomercial. And they're advertising some overpriced piece of equipment. And the guy's like, you can get shredded in 45 days. And you're like, I want to get shredded in 45, even 35 days I'd be open to. And you're like, I'm going to do it. And then you order it. And it's like 2 a.m. You don't even know what you're doing. And then it arrives. And you're like, what is this? And you're like, oh, yeah, I ordered that. You forgot. And then you build the thing. It takes like 6 hours. And you're like, well, that's the workout for the first day is just building it for sure. And then the next day you use the machine and you're like, dude, I feel so awesome. I am going to do this every day. I feel so good. And then the next day, you're like, well, I'm not going to work out today. You know, they say it's healthier if you let your muscles breathe. So, and I'm in this for health. I'm not in this for looks. I'm in this for health. And then you wake up the next day and you're like, you know what? I'm fine with the way I look. I'm just going to move on. And now I'm just going to take a map of the world and no one will even know that the thing is there. And so, and maybe that's autobiographical. Who knows? Anyway, so do I own a map of the world? I don't know. Maybe I'm Magellan. Anyway, so now here's the, here's the thing that we don't realize. The thing that we don't realize is the power of a little becoming a lot. And what I mean by that is that when it comes to your vision becoming reality, you're like, well, I've got a job and I got to do my job. Yeah, you got to do your job. But then you have moments where you can say, every day I'm going to do something. I'm going to work on it a little bit when I can to turn that vision into a reality. Now, honestly, I mean, think about it. What does a goldsmith know about building a wall, like about major construction? Nothing. I mean, certainly the perfumer is not, like, what's that guy know about construction? Next to him is the politician. What does a politician know about anything, right? And now I have, for these first two services, I was so disciplined to not say anything because I know, you know, Tuesday night, and some people are very happy and some people are not happy, and I'm just doing my best to kind of thread the needle and just be like, you know, you just celebrate in peace, or, you know, like, I know some people like yelling and screaming, like just do that away from me. And if you want to just like let it out, just, you know, do that like in a pillow or something. And so anyway, so I'm not going to say anything, and I'm moving on. So that's that. That's it. That's all I said. I'm moving on. And then everybody started laughing, just like you guys. Like, he's gonna say something. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to say anything. I'm moving on. But I'm just saying it's very difficult for me not to say anything because there's just so many jokes. But I'm having so much discipline. I'm like the most disciplined person right now, not saying anything. Okay, so, but here's the point, right? Is that it's not just a little becomes a lot, but listen, a lot of people doing some creates movement. Listen, the number one thing that people have said to me, and I understand the heart that it comes, and the heart is good, but they'll say, like, you know, when it comes to the next campaign and the new building and all that, like, I wish I had $1 million to give you. The truth is, we don't need one person to give us $1 million. Although, let me sidebar. If a person in this service wants to give $1 million, I just want you to know it will be received with joy. And you are going to get the nicest thank you card from me. I mean, it's going to be like, frame this thing. I've never been so blessed by the words that someone said. Anyway, but that's what's waiting. But anyway, now, but the truth is we don't need necessarily one person to give $1 million. What we do need to turn this vision into a reality is for everyone to do something. And that's why we talk about everyone being committed, everyone getting involved, everyone sacrificing. That's how we get there. And so, but listen, don't buy these, wow, it's just such a big vision. How does it become? If the project's too big. It's really not. It is if it's one person. But it's not. Listen, building the walls of an entire city, an entire ancient city, that's a huge project. And you know what happens? Everyone just decided to take their section. I can't worry about the entire wall. All I can worry about is my section. And if I can do my section, and you can do your section, and they will do their section, the whole wall of the city gets built and the vision becomes reality. Now, there's more in this chapter, and I don't have a ton of time to talk about it, but there's so many interesting names, interesting stories of these people that were getting involved. But I want to show you a couple of things, and I want to talk about some of the enemies of Nehemiah and what they do. But look what happens in chapter 4 in verse 1. It says, "But it so happened, when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, that he was furious and very indignant, and mocked the Jews. And he spoke before his brethren and the army of Samaria, and said, what are these feeble Jews doing? Will they fortify themselves? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they complete it in a day? Will they revive the stones from the heaps of rubbish, stones that are burned?" Now Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him, and he said, "Whatever they build, even if a fox goes up on it, he will break down their stone wall." And here's Nehemiah's response. "Hear, O our God, for we are despised, and turn their reproach on their own heads, and give them as plunder to a land of captivity. Do not cover their iniquity, and do not let their sin be blotted out from before you, for they have provoked you to anger before the builders." And so we built the wall, and the entire wall was joined together up to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. Now it happened when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the Ashdodites heard that the wall of Jerusalem was being destroyed and the gaps were beginning to be closed, that they became very angry. And all of them conspired together to come and attack Jerusalem and create confusion. Nevertheless, we made our prayer to God, and because of them, we set a watch against them night and day. Now, if you pause there and give me your attention, first thing we talked about vision killers, don't delay in getting started. But the second thing is this, and this is so important, and that is do not listen to the naysayers. Do not listen to the naysayers. Now that the thing is coming together, the wall is coming together, it's halfway built. Now there's all of this, there's confusion internally, there's attacks coming from the outside. And I want to tell you that there's always going to be naysayers when you want to do something significant. When my wife and I announced that we were coming here 24 years ago to start this church, there were so many incredible people who were supportive of us, and God did so many amazing things to show us that this is what we were supposed to do, and what we were supposed that we were supposed to start this church. And listen, from my pastor and other pastors that I knew that were senior pastors, they were like, Bob, this is God has built you for this. This is exactly what you need to be doing. And I was really encouraged. But there were some naysayers who said it couldn't happen. And I remember one guy sat me down, and he's like, okay, let me tell you something. Number one, you're too young. Now, just FYI, I was 26 years old when we had our very first service at Calvary in September of 2000. So if you ever wonder, like, was he ever young? Yes, he was. Not as good looking as I am now, but I was younger back then. And but he said, you're too young. You're too inexperienced. You need more training. You need better skills. Maybe in 5 years you'll be ready. And I listened to him and I said, hey, listen. And by the way, this is someone that I really cared about. And I just said, listen, we've seen so many people just be so encouraging, and we really feel like God has done this and this and this and this. And so, I mean, we're not going to double back now. We're going to go and do the thing God has called us to do. And man, it was so weird. It was like as if I was doing it to him. He got so angry with me, and he huffed and puffed, and was like, I'm going to blow your house down. And he told me, he's like, you are going to fail. Do you hear me? You're going to fail. He's like, if you could gather 50 people for a church, I would be totally shocked. And I was like, wow, thank you. And now, let me fast forward. So at Calvary, we do pastors' conferences and stuff there's like, 1,300 Calvary Chapel churches. And so 1 year, this is maybe 6-7 years into our church, I get invited to be one of the main speakers at the whole conference of the Southeast region, which is really a huge honor. This is like the first conference that I've ever been invited to, and so I was like over the moon. I couldn't believe it. I mean, anyway, so I get invited, and things are going really well at Calvary, which is why I got invited. And anyway, I teach my session, and then I'm done, and I come down, and that guy is waiting for me. And he's like, hey, Bob, it's good to see you. I'm like, hey, brother. And he's like, hey, I don't know, do you remember, you probably don't even remember, a few years ago, we had a conversation about, I said some things and you about it not going well. Does that even ring a bell? I have the transcript. And he's like, I just want to tell you that I was wrong, and I only said all of those things because I wanted you to come work for me, and I'm really sorry. And I just thought, like, is that that was you trying to like woo me? Was like, tell me that, that was, could you, and I'm thinking all this as he's saying it, and I'm like, how did you propose to your wife? Like, listen, lady, you're going to be alone with cats. No one's interested in this situation. But, I mean, I'll take you. So, will you? Kiss me, you fool. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe that's how it went down. I don't know. But anyway, and that's like, and then he told me, I'm like, yeah, I remember. And well, I appreciate that. And then that was that. And I'm like, hey, maybe we don't ever talk again. And no, I didn't. We're still friends. I love him. And he was wrong, but I do tell him about how well it's going every time I see him. It's just like, in Jesus' name. And so anyway, and and I shouldn't do that, but I do, and will continue to. So now, I tell you the story because there's always going to be naysayers. And listen, the naysayers always have an ulterior motive. There's always something in it for them. And listen, the group giving Nehemiah trouble didn't want Jerusalem built because it meant trouble for them. It was a loss of influence for them. It was a loss of power for them. They didn't care about the city. They didn't care about the people one bit. Sanballat oversaw the area just north of Jerusalem. Tobiah oversaw the area just to the east of Sanballat. Geshem oversaw the area south of Jerusalem. So all these guys, they don't want a strong Jerusalem because it's a problem for them. And I want to tell you something, and this is so important when you're kind of in the middle of it, is that Sanballat and Tobiah seem like really loud voices in the moment. And listen, there can be times when family members can be Sanballat and Tobiah, friends can be Sanballat and Tobiah, colleagues can be Sanballat and Tobiah. But listen, and how do you know? How do you know if someone is just maybe sharing a hard truth because they love you? Or how do you know that they're just a naysayer? Here's how you know. Do they personally have something to gain from you not doing the thing you're doing? And if you do it, do they have something to lose? And if they do, then you may have a Sanballat on your hands. And you combat that, not by attacking in the same way. You combat it by trusting God and continuing the work. And that's why Nehemiah prays that incredible prayer, is God, whatever they're praying, whatever they're saying against us, just turn and do that to them. And then they continue the work. They didn't stop. Listen, and we're going to talk about this next time because this is so important. They didn't stop to be like, hey, maybe we can get coffee and I'll really explain to you what I'm doing. No. There's no explanation that's going to be good enough for the Sanballat, Tobiahs, and Geshems of the world. Here's what you do. You just keep doing the work. You keep fulfilling the vision that God had given you. And guess what? And why is it important? Because listen, it's halfway built. They're halfway there. Cue up the Bon Jovi song because it's going, right? And that's when the attacks got serious. Why? When they knew Nehemiah was serious. And by the way, you're not going to find naysayers if you're sitting around Starbucks philosophizing about the problems of the world. But they're going to show up when you actually start pursuing the vision that God has given you with everything you've got. And by the way, here's the good news. When the naysayers come out, it means that the determination you have, the passion you have, and the commitment to God's vision that you have is making them nervous. Because I said this last week, and I'll say it again, the enemy always overplays his hand. Always. Now, how do they respond to that? And I want to read this whole section to you, and then we'll comment on it. Look at verse 10. Then Judah said, the strength of the laborers is failing, and there's so much rubbish that we are not able to build the wall. And our adversaries said, they will neither know nor see anything until we come up in their midst and kill them and cause the work to cease. So it was when the Jews who dwelt near them came that they told us 10 times, from whatever place you turn, they will be upon us. Therefore, I positioned men behind the lower parts of the wall at the openings, and I set the people according to their families with swords, their spears, and their bows. And I looked and arose and said to the nobles and the leaders and the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, great and awesome, to fight for your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. And it happened when our enemies heard that it was known to us and that God had brought their plot to nothing, that all of us returned to the wall, everyone to his work. And so it was from that time on that half of my servants worked at construction, while the other half held spears and shields and bows and wore armor, and the leaders were behind all the house of Judah. And then those who built on the wall and those who carried burdens loaded themselves so that with one hand they worked at construction, and with the other they held a weapon. And every one of the builders had his sword girded at his side as he built, and the one who sounded the trumpet was beside me. Then I said to the nobles, the rulers, the rest of the people, the work is great and extensive, and we are separated far from one another on the wall. Whenever you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us, and our God will fight for us. So we labored in the work. Half of the men held spears from daybreak until the stars appeared. And at the same time, I also said to the people, let each man and his servant stay at night in Jerusalem, that they may be our guard at night, and a working party by day. So neither I, my brethren, my servants, nor the men of the guard who followed me took off their clothes, except everyone who took them off for washing. Now, if you pause there and give me your attention, don't cry. Everything's going to work out in the story. And now, here's the third thing, all right? Here's what happens. What's this third vision killer? And that is, do not lose sight of the goal. Don't lose sight of the goal. I want you to notice, and Nehemiah does such a good job of this, is that he starts talking about how they get halfway, and now the work is getting tiresome. There's people on the outside. There's so much work still to do, and there's kind of all this confusion. And it's like, and that's somehow going to keep people from doing the work. And that's where we've got to stay focused on the thing that's most important. And sometimes we just get derailed by things that don't really matter. I'll tell you an example of that. My wife and I were having this conversation recently with our kids because they were turning some stuff in for school. And we were talking about the day that the grading system changed. Now, when we were kids up through the 11th grade of high school, when it changed, it used to be that 90 to 100 was an A. If you're old enough, you remember this. 80 to 89 was a B, 70 to 79 was a C, and so forth. And then it changed that it was 94 to 100 is an A, 85 to 93 was a B, and anyway, so forth. And so I was explaining that to my kids, and my wife was like, I was so mad when that happened. I'm like, me too. I was furious. And what did you do about it? And she said, nothing. I studied harder. What did you do? I'm like, well, we staged a protest. And we said at 10 a.m. the next day when it went into effect, we're all going to stand up in our classes and just walk out the door, and we're all going to meet at the American flag in front of the school. I mean, this is how, listen, we started a revolution over less. And so anyway, so sure enough, the next day at 10 a.m., hundreds of us got up out of our classrooms, and we went to the flags in front of the school. At the high school I went to, Taravella in Coral Springs. And then we, but what do you do when you're done? We just ditched school the rest of the day. But it was in protest of a corrupt system. And that's really important. And we had fun and stuff, but it was all in protest. So anyway, the next day I'm back in class because, what are you going to do? So I'm back in class, and my English teacher, who I had for last period, he's like, Bob, why weren't you in class yesterday? And I gave him this impassioned speech. I wasn't a public speaker yet, but I really went for it. In that portable, I was like Abraham Lincoln talking about freedom. And anyway, so that / William Wallace. And anyway, so I'm giving this impassioned speech about the rules, the system is corrupt, the whole thing. And he says, Bob, you have a 37% in my class. This doesn't even affect you. If we lowered it by 20 points, you're still failing. And I'm like, listen, man, that's not the point. This isn't even about me. This is about future generations. And anyway, yeah, I still failed that class. But listen, sometimes you just, instead of doing what my wife did, I just studied harder. I started creating all this other nonsense. But let me tell you what happens, right? The walls of Jerusalem are getting built. They're halfway. And look what happens. Instead of focusing on how much is done, they're focusing on how much is left. And so they find out that here's what happens. The people are tired. There's still a lot of work because there's still so much rubble. The enemies are saying that they're going to kill us. We're fatigued. And they start making excuses about how it's not going to work out. And listen, what causes them, and this is why Nehemiah is such a great leader, is that what causes this group to get discouraged is they forgot what they were doing and whom they were doing it for. Was it a lot of work? Yes. Was it tiresome? Absolutely. Was there an enemy? Most definitely. But what's the alternative? Is the alternative do nothing? Is the alternative take it easy? Is that going to make all the problems in Jerusalem go away? Of course not. You're still going to be bullied. You're still going to be harassed by these people. But the only thing you can do is keep going. That's why, listen, I'm a fan of Winston Churchill. Some people don't like him, but as far as wartime prime ministers, he's at the top of the list. But he said, if you're going through hell, keep going. That is just an excellent quote, an excellent idea. Listen, if it's difficult, what are you going to do? You just keep going. Nehemiah says it this way. He says this, remember the Lord. Because the worst time, the most vulnerable time that you are in in the vision. It's not in the beginning. You're excited in the beginning. And it's not in the end because you're seeing the thing come to fruition. It's always at the halfway point. At the halfway point is the moment where you're not sure if it's coming together or coming apart. And this is where Nehemiah has to recast the vision for the people. And by the way, we're going to find out it takes 52 days to rebuild the wall. They're 26 days in. And he has to remind them why they're building the walls in the first place. Remember the Lord, that he says is all about them remembering what God has done, that God has brought them this far. The wall is halfway built. They're building momentum. The enemies are scared, and that's why they're making threats. And remember the Lord is all about remembering God's character and nature and remembering that what God has done in the past, he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Now, where does that put us here at Calvary? We're in the third weekend of 4 Commitment Sundays. We're just over that halfway point. And you know what? Everyone that I've talked to is excited. Because they're excited that we're going to be making more room for people. They're excited that we're going to be able to reach more people. We're going to see more people come to know Jesus. And what does it take? It takes all of us putting our hand to do the work. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not one person doing it all. That's not how it works. It takes all of us doing our part. It's every person taking their part of the wall and making it happen. But that involves us taking a stand, making a decision to be involved. Now, in a couple of minutes, I'm going to invite the ushers to come forward and they're going to receive the next commitments. But before they do, I want to share a couple of things with you that are really important. First, this isn't about building a building. It's really, ultimately, it's not about building a building. Just like when you started attending here, it wasn't so much about the building. It was about there being a place where you can grow, come to know Jesus, grow in your faith, and grow to maturity and see your life change and your family be transformed. And my hope is that you will care about those people who are coming next in the same way that those who came before us cared about you because you were those who were coming next for them. Second, now you may not know this, but God does bless generous people. And a lot of us, we have generous thoughts and we think that's enough. Generosity isn't, if I had $1 million, I'd give it to you. That's not generosity. The measure of generosity is what we do with what we've been trusted with now. And if we're faithful with what we have now, God will entrust us with more. Why? Because he knows that if God gives us more, that we're going to do good with it. But understand, sometimes we're like, well, okay, but what if God just gives me more now, and then I say I'm going to be faithful? It's not the way it works. And in the economy of God, I've been walking with God for more than half my life, and I can tell you, I've never seen it work that way. I've seen that when we're faithful, God entrusts us with more. And so, but we've just got to decide how we can be faithful now. And once again, I know that sometimes, we talk about numbers and man, that just sounds like so much. But remember, it's not so much when you think about the course of 3 years. Now, let me give you an example. If someone says, I want to give $5,000, that sounds like a lot. But what does that mean? That means on Commitment Sunday, they give $500 and they commit to $125 over the course of 36 months. That's a $5,000 commitment. And you're like, man, but who has that? I mean, can I just tell you something that, let me show you this next slide. If you frequent Starbucks, and let me tell you something, we're all frequenting Starbucks because I've never seen one go out of business. In fact, I heard they're starting a Starbucks in the bathroom of a Starbucks. So this place ain't going out of business. Now, if you're going there and getting a latte, that's $7. And if you go there, that's $210 a month. That, over the course of 3 years, is $7,500 that you could give to the work of those who are coming next. And by the way, I'm not saying, well, coffee is evil. We know coffee's not evil. We know it's of God. We know it. We feel it. And we affirm it. All right? Now, but what I am saying is that we could make some adjustments. And if we made some adjustments, we could make a huge impact in the lives of other people. Let me go back to the other slide. How does somebody give $10,000? They give $1,000 during Commitment Sunday, and it's $250 for 36 months. That's a $10,000 gift. You know how that's so significant. And you say, well, man, but listen, you're giving more than that to Comcast and the 20 streaming services that you have subscribed to because you want to have the same access to stuff that you had when you had cable. By the way, I have this idea because we had this thing called cable where all the channels got together and we just paid one price. Eventually, someone's going to come up with a solution where they're going to package all of the streaming services together, and that's going to be called cable. Anyway, so life will just be a circle. It will be the Circle of Life, and Simba will be there anyway. And so my point is this, is that, and I'm not saying like, oh, you can't have a streaming service and you shouldn't. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we can make certain decisions that allow us to make a big impact over the course of 3 years. How does somebody give $25,000? It's a $7,000 on Commitment Sunday, $500 for 36 months. How does somebody give $50,000? That just seems unthinkable. $14,000 and $1,000 for 36 months. Once again, let me just tell you, lest you misunderstand me. I'm not saying you can't do anything fun. What I'm saying is that if we will make a decision that, hey, I'm going to sacrifice something because I want to be involved, and there is the ability, if we will modify our lives and sacrifice for the sake of somebody else. And what I'm not doing, and this is the thing that's important, I'm not telling you what you should give, and I'm certainly not going to make giving some type of spectacle. What I'm simply doing is giving you some ideas about how we can think creatively and about how we can be generous for the sake of others, because others have been generous for the sake of us. And God has a way of blessing people when they decide that they're going to be a blessing. So I'm going to invite the ushers to come forward, and they're going to receive the next commitments that you filled out. If you gave online, that's okay. Just write online, and we'll know that you have already participated. While they do that, I want to tell you 2 stories. The first is about the couple that you saw that were in our opening video, Jose and Lucy. Jose and Lucy, they've been coming to Calvary since 2001. They were they're at the movie theater, and they made a really significant commitment to Next. And as they said in the video, they were going to buy a camper. They're both retiring, but they wanted to make a legacy gift for Next. And they said, we're going to buy a camper, but we're going to sacrifice, not give the camper, and instead we're going to give the money that we were going to that we were going to use to buy the camper, because we feel like this is more important. So I call Jose this week, and I'm like, hey, I just want you to know that you were going to show your video this week. And he's like, oh, wow, that's great. Now, mind you, these videos get shot weeks in advance and then get edited and whatever. And he says, Pastor Bob, can I tell you a story about that video? And I said, sure. And he says, you know that we decided to put off buying the camper, and then that this was actually a retirement purchase that we were going to make, because now it's like we were going to start traveling and whatever, and because we're both retiring. But we knew which one we were going to get and all that, but we decided when we heard about the Next campaign that we weren't going to do it, because the growth of Calvary, the future of people who are far from God, is more important, and that the camper will happen. They said that in the video, the camper will happen sometime in the future. And he says, but Pastor Bob, God did something like we never thought could happen. And God blessed us in such a way that was even more than what we committed. And we were able to buy the camper this week. And he's like, but here's the problem. I feel bad. I said I wasn't buying the camper. So now do I have to film like a follow-up video to be like, hey, it's me again. So it turns out, and I'm like, no. You don't have to do that. You just got to let me tell the rest of the story. Because this is what we're talking about. You guys made a commitment with no expectation of what God was going to do, and God blessed you beyond what you were going to be able to give. Why? Because God honors people who honor Him. By the way, the first 2 services clapped right there. Right there. Wow, spontaneous applause. So amazing. And listen, this is the thing. This is what I want for you. I want you to experience that in your life. Now, if you've been at Calvary, you know that, unless you've only been at Calvary for 3 weeks and you think this is all we talk about, we don't talk about money very often. If you've been attending here for like 2.5 years, you've probably never heard me broach the subject. And it's not because talking about money isn't important. It's because I recognize that so many churches have a terrible reputation when it comes to money, and then don't even get me started on Christian television, which, by the way, is neither Christian nor television. And that's a different sermon. But here's the thing, and so I'm saying this at the risk of being misunderstood, because the people who don't attend yet, the people who are coming next, they don't have a voice. Just like you didn't realize that you needed to come to know Jesus until this building was built and you came here and God started working in your life and transformed your life, your family, your legacy, and your future. And so, listen, let me tell you the part that nobody wants to hear, and that is, what happens? Well, what happens if we don't raise the money? Well, then here's what happens if we don't raise the money. Nothing happens. We don't meet the goal, and there's no more space for adults. There's no space for youth. There's no space for kids. We just keep doing what we've been doing. And then we just force people to sit in the lobby until they don't want to, and we force people to sit in the cafe, and then the things start to stagnate, because that's how it is. You start losing momentum. Listen, there's only 18% of churches in America are growing. And we happen to be one of the fastest growing churches in the country. And that requires, I appreciate that. But friends, listen, that blessing requires something of us. It's a stewardship that we have. And it requires some sacrifice on all of our parts. People say this to me all the time, man, I wish I could have been part of Calvary in the early days. And what they're saying is, I wish I could have been part of Calvary in like those pivotal moments in our history. Friends, this is a pivotal moment in our history. This is it. And you and I have the opportunity to impact thousands of people with this new property. Can I just tell you this? Isn't that the dream? When you became a Christian, Jesus came into your life and forgave you and started changing your life, and your spouse and your kids and your family and your friends. You were like, I want this, what I've experienced, I want that for everyone. Everyone I know and everyone I don't know. Friends, this is the dream, that we get to do something so significant, all of us, that impacts lives and legacies and eternities of countless people. This is our moment. This is our moment to do that. I'm going to tell you one last story, and then we're going to be done. But I want to tell you about the last time we had to raise money at the church, 2017, when the property next door became available. I've never told this story in full, and so I'm going to tell you the whole story and give you a little bit of background. We'll be out of here in 2 minutes, but, well, not 2 minutes in preacher time. So I get a call one day. So just so you know, this property, these two properties initially were one property. There was a church that used to own this, and they split it. They sold the front so that they could build on this side that we have right now. And it didn't work out, and the church kind of imploded. And then we came along and we purchased the property, but this belonged to somebody else. Okay. So I get a call from the developer who owns this property, and he's building a shopping center. Well, what he finds out when he submits his plans to the city is that the city will give him an entrance off Miramar, but not an exit. And so then he goes to the county says no, now he's got a problem. So he calls me and he says, hey, we own the property next door, and I need you to give me unfettered access 24 hours a day in perpetuity to your exit so that my customers in the shopping center can get on and off whenever they want. And so, which by the way, I mean, I give the guy, he's a bold ask. But I'm like, listen, man, I appreciate the call, but that's not going to work. I mean, we have like little kids that are crossing the street with their parents, and it's a hazard. Besides, like, there's liability issues. What if one of your customers hits somebody? What if one of our folks hits one of your customers? I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but that just creates all kinds of liability. And he says, well, the people who owned the property before you split the property, sold it to us, and we don't have a means of getting, we don't have a means of egress. We can't get off of the property because we have an entrance but no exit. And I said, listen, that sounds like you have a problem with the county, who are the ones that approved the split, and you have a problem with the people who sold you the property, neither of which is me. And he's like, well, I don't see it that way, and so we'll see you in court. And I'm like, well, then it's a date. And so our attorney gets involved, and we do like depositions and mediation, and none of it comes to an agreement. We set the date, the court date, to go to trial. And then something happens shortly before the trial is going to start, and that is, there's a case in West Palm Beach, and it's almost the exact same circumstances. There's somebody who splits their property. They have a means of getting in but not getting out. They sue the people who had purchased the property, and anyway, the whole thing got thrown out. The people who were suing lost. So I have that little piece of information in my pocket, but I'm not going to say anything. So I decide to call the owner, and I just say, hey, can I come down and see you for us to talk before this thing goes to trial? And he's like, sure enough. He's kind enough to say yes. I drive down to South Miami where his office is, and we're talking. Now, I think he's under the impression that I'm scared to go to trial. And during the course of the conversation, I let it accidentally slip that case in West Palm Beach got thrown out, and that my side won, and that's going to be a number one thing that we bring up right on the first day of the trial. And so And so then I say, look, here's the reality. This is the case. This is now case law. You've got an issue, and that is you've got a property that you can't sell because you can't build on it, and you can't sell it to anybody else. And the only person that you can sell it to looks a lot like me. And I said, so how about this? Instead of going to trial, how about I make you an offer on the property and we just buy it because it does have value to us. Well, okay, maybe you send us. Okay, so then I came back the next day, we made him an offer. By the way, that property is worth more than 300% more than what we paid for it. And we own it now. Now, yeah. But I got to back up. There's one more thing that's important, is because when the guy said yes, he wasn't happy about it. And so he's like, okay, that's fine, but I want it all done in 21 days. Now, if you know anything about real estate, closing on a house is hard in 21 days. Closing on a commercial property is very difficult. Closings are usually 60 to 90 to 120 days. He wants to do it in 3 weeks. And he's thinking like, well, they'll never be able to come up with it. So we were like doing environmental studies. We're doing all of it at breakneck speeds, appraisals, everything at breakneck speeds. And we have to come up, because we talked to the Baptists who've been so good to us, and they're like, we can give you the loan, but you got to come up with $100,000 on your own. You got to come up with $100,000 in 3 weeks. Now, okay, so that's what I got to do. Let me give you a quick backstory. 9 months before this happened, we were seeing kind of the trajectory of where things were going at Calvary. Our plan was actually to build the building that we're building, but right next to us, and then build an office building right here. And so we were like, it's so tight, we're not sure that that's going to work. So I made this, so right outside of my office upstairs, there's this set of stairs, this ladder that goes up to the roof. By the way, I don't recommend you going up there, but I would go up there every week for months. Every week I'd go up there and just pray for God to give us that property. And now it was here. But I had 3 weeks to come up with $100,000, or this guy was not going to give us an extension. He was just, anyway. So I get up. And by the way, we started a next campaign. It's like we had like vision meetings and we're talking to people. We have like brochures made up. There's no time. I had that meeting with that guy on a Friday, and 2 days later I stand up and I'm like, here's the deal. We got to come up with $100,000. Now it's 19 days before we got to come up with it. And listen, the good people of Calvary have always been generous and stepped up. And I'm like, man, this just seems like a big ask. All of a sudden, dropping the bomb like right here, and seemed like a tall order. I taught the lesson, the message, shared all this, and then on Monday I sent out an email. Hey, if you weren't here, here's a link to the message. Here's what we're doing, and we got to come up with $100,000 in 18 days. Later that day, I get a call from a guy, does not attend here. In fact, he came here one time he told me, he's like, oh, I was here one time at the grand opening. I was here. And he doesn't live in this area. But somehow the email, he's not on our email list either. He got the email forwarded to him by somebody. And who, by the way, whoever sent that email, thank you. And but he forwarded the email, and the guy calls me and he goes, hey, listen, I saw that you need to raise $100,000 in 21 days. I want to partner with Calvary. I am overnighting you a check for $20,000. And because I want you to see this become a reality. Well, 21 days later, we signed on the dotted line. We bought the property. That's the property we're building on. And all of that happened. Listen, this guy's actions encouraged me that God was really going to make this thing happen. We did it. We own it. And that's the property we're building on. And here's the point that I'm making. By the way, first service really clapped hard right there. And wow. The spontaneous applause. Now, here's the point that I'm making. God has been leading us and getting us ready for this moment for the last 7 years. And now it's our turn. It's our turn to put the ball in the end zone. Here's what Nehemiah said: remember the Lord. Remember all that he's done, all that he wants to do, that God really is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. And listen, I am asking every one of us to step up, to decide to be involved and build their piece of the wall. And when we do, this big vision becomes reality. Let's pray together. And Lord, we want to thank you for that. We're grateful that you place the challenges before us to stretch us, to build our faith, so that you can meet us where we are and we can see you do more than we could ask, think, or imagine. Lord, our prayer is that you wouldn't just help us meet this goal, you would exceed this goal as you stretch our faith, and we really would see again and again how you are so trustworthy, not just in the life of Calvary, but in each of our lives individually. Lord, we thank you for it. We pray it in Jesus' name, and everybody said, amen. Amen. Let's all...
Thank you for joining us today. If you made a decision to follow Jesus and begin a relationship with him, congratulations. It's the best decision you're ever going to make. You may be wondering, so what happens now? Where do I go from here? Just text BEGIN to 62488 and we'll be able to send you this free gift. It's a book called Begin, written by Pastor Bob, and it's going to help you take those first steps on your new journey of faith. So remember, to stay up to date with everything happening at Calvary, follow @MyCalvary on Instagram and Facebook. Until next week, we love you. We're praying for you. God bless you.